Hi, I'm Don Armstrong. This video is the second of our two parts on scheduling maintenance work, where we take the work order information from your maintenance computer system and prepare a detailed weekly work schedule for routine, non-shutdown maintenance work. This is for a typical maintenance crew in any industry or institution. The purpose of this is to ensure that the highest priority work always gets done first. Now, in part one, we created a prioritized backlog list, and that's a good halfway towards creating a good schedule. We also showed how to update the backlog using the merge table wizard. I'm going to start with some general comments from part one that are worth repeating. When you have the backlog set up, save it on your server, back it up, password protected, and make it available for anybody as read-only files. And do the same for all the updates and for all the templates and schedules we'll look at in this video. Now, there's absolutely no need to copy any information in the backlog or schedules back into your maintenance computer. The maintenance computer is for planning and tracking costs, and these Excel backlogs and schedules are for managing the work. Now, it should be easy to download the required work order fields for backlog management from your maintenance computer. In most systems, that's a one-click process or almost anyway. And it's worth repeating that schedules will always be wrong, and that's the nature of maintenance. Expect them to change daily. This video shows how to set up a weekly schedule. It's a detailed and very valuable framework from which daily schedules must be extracted each afternoon for the next day. Don't try to keep the weekly schedule up to date as changes occur. Now, daily schedules are the subject of another video. Now, this is not a lesson in Microsoft Excel. I will point out some techniques as I go through the scheduling process, and you might find that these are very useful for many other things that you use Excel for. Now, if you want to learn how to do things like password protect templates and data files or to set up macros, contact your IT department, use the Excel help function, or contact me. Now, the templates and macros and other files you'll see in this video are free for the asking. If you want to contact us, we'll send you a copy. The process I'm going to go through may appear a little complex, but bear in mind that most of what we're going to talk about covers setting up the scheduling templates. Once that is done, it's fast and easy to build a work schedule. Now, I've seen quite a few maintenance systems, and I don't know of any other that has a scheduling process as flexible and as practical as the one I'm going to show you. Now, here's the backlog we created in part one. Now, the jobs in priority order using the P1, P2, PM as primary and secondary priorities, and then the PM frequency as the sort order. This puts them in an order in which the job should be attacked in the schedule. Now, this is a snapshot of the backlog as of the 12th of April. Now, we showed you how to update the backlog with the changes to the next week, the 19th of April. But if you recall, this update included several duplicated and completed jobs, and we'll show how to address this during the scheduling process in this video. Now, if you're the backlog manager, you should review the priorities, certainly the ones in the P1s in the sort of 1 to 5 or 1 to 6 category, every week when you update the backlog. And at least once a month, the operating and maintenance supervisor should go through the entire backlog, which may be 200 or 300 jobs, to make sure that nothing is falling through the cracks. It's easy to scroll down. You can see about 15 or so on each screen. It doesn't take very long to scan down the backlog and have a look, make sure that there's nothing being missed. Now, priorities will change, some quickly, like a bearing is getting noisy, and some very slowly. For example, if you put painting off, corrosion will increase, and so on. And there are some jobs that are going to stay on the bottom of the list. And if it's apparent that a job is never going to get done, it should be cancelled. You have to keep the backlog under control. Now, remember that priority or urgency, same thing, is based on the risk of something happening in a certain time period. It's affected by things like changing equipment conditions, getting noisier. It's affected by things like opportunities. If you have an outdoor painting program, then you have to finish it before the end of the summer. And it may be affected by dependencies. For example, you have to get some work done in advance for a shutdown. Now in the example I'm going to use here, there are some jobs that can only be done when an order for the Hopkins company is being run. And that happens only once a quarter, and it just happens this order is being run in the week we're scheduling for. So we need to make sure we go down a little further down the priority list to find any of the jobs that are in that category. Of course, urgency has nothing to do with the availability of materials or people. Now, if a job's truly urgent and materials aren't available, we'll do something else like fabricate parts or connect standby equipment and so on. Just don't move the job on the list because materials are available. Materials don't affect its priority at all. There are 2 steps to create a detailed weekly work schedule. The first is to determine the number of available hours in each trade, and then match those hours to the highest priority work to see how much of it can be accomplished during the week. That's a very good start. The next step is to assign individual tradespeople to the work orders and also determine when each job will start and end. So this is the result of the first step. What we're going to develop first is a prioritized list of work showing what is physically possible to achieve next week in this format. The green boxes on here show jobs that we have enough manpower to do next week. This is a very, very good start. Now this is our ultimate goal. Now this schedule shows who's going to do each job, when it'll be done, in a perfect world, of course, which we know that it's not. But a great advantage of the process that we're going to go through is that it's very easy to revise if priorities change, or during the preparation of the schedule you want to move jobs between people or delete jobs or add jobs and so on. Now each box represents a job, and inside the box there's a number, and if you recall on our backlog we had a place to put a reference number, and that's what these reference numbers are. Let's go through step 1 first. We must first determine who will be available to do the work next week, and for this we'll need to set up the graphic scheduling template. Now this is the template that's used for the weekly schedule, and it should be saved and protected. It's in Excel, of course, with many narrow columns. You can see the grid lines that are 1 hour apart. They're very faint on here. I'm going to hide those for now. It makes it look a little tidier. So you can see that we've got columns now that are 2 hours wide. There's blocks of work from 8 till 10, 10 till noon, and so on. Column for preparatory work if somebody comes in early, and overtime if somebody works late. And there are headings for weather and events. There are some jobs that require good weather, so it's not a bad idea to have a look at the long-term forecast and put the weather for each day at the top of the schedule. And events are things that affect scheduling. In the example we're going to look at, there are some jobs that can only be done while we're running an order for Hopkins. Now, the Hopkins order shuts down some equipment, makes it available for maintenance. It's an important scheduling limitation. So we'll put things like that in the headings. So we make a copy of the template and enter in the names and trade of each of the crew members. I put a blue line in here separating the mechanical from the electrical trades. Save this again as a new template. You'll use it each week. And you may obviously have more than 2 trades. This is a simple example, and we'll come back to that later and see how to handle multiple trades. Now we'll start to calculate the available hours. Now the boxes I've shown at the bottom here are just templates that we use for building the schedule. They are text boxes, and the way to create a text box is it's simply just put insert text box, draw it down here. You can right click on it and you can fill it in if you want, and you can also change the settings by clicking on text box here. You can change the text direction, all those good things. So we'll delete that for now. The purple box on the right is not used in the weekly scheduling process. It's only used when you're updating it to build the daily schedules, and we'll come back to that in another video. Now we'll start by entering the absences. First of all, we'll enter the safety meeting. That's for an hour after lunch on Thursday. Now we've got this template down here which is for a crew meeting. Now we can just copy that. There's many ways to do that. You can right click and go copy and paste, or you can go Control C to copy and Control V to paste. But because we do that so many times when we're building the schedule, I've set up a little macro In my case, it's Control Z or Control Z. So I just click on that and press Control Z, and it's copied that box. I have another little macro, Control N, that deletes the text out of that box. I have to put Control N, and I put in safety meeting, and I can drag this box over to 12:30 on Thursday. This template down here is for absences. Control Z, Control N, and type in vacation. We know Mike's on vacation all week, so we can drag that up to Mike. Fill that across till the end of the week. Control Z, we got Susan on vacation at least Mary on vacation for 3 days, back on Thursday. And we know that Richard's on union business on Tuesday. Nice to know these things in advance of preparing the schedule. And we'll change that to union business. So now you've got the absences have been entered. Now I need to enter the hours for each person. We know that there's 39 hours available, 40 hours in the week less the safety meeting, so we put 39 in there. And we can fill that down to the bottom of the mechanical, Control D, and correct them for where this changes. 0 for Mike and 41 for Richard. Same thing with the electrical. With just 15 for Mary. So you can see that now we have 314 hours of mechanical time available and 93 hours of electrical. Now we can go back to the backlog list to see how many of our priority jobs can be done with this many hours. Now before we can match the hours to schedule to the work list, we need to remove the jobs that we can't schedule because the material won't be available. No point in trying to schedule jobs that you know you can't do. Now the status that's carried over from the maintenance computer system shows some jobs with an M status, which means waiting for material. But we know that some of it's going to arrive during the schedule week, so we can change those so that we can add them to the schedule. So to do that, we'll turn the filter on, select all, turn the filter on, and look at the status code. We want to look at the jobs that are waiting for material only. So I'll filter those, and you can see this one here is going to be delivered during the week. So we'll change that to ready to schedule. This one's the same thing. This one, the fabric's arriving on Tuesday, built on Tuesday as well. So that's done. We turn the filter off, and now we have jobs in the backlog that have the correct status for scheduling. So let's remove the jobs that won't have material available. Once again, filter that, click on status. We want to see everything except the ones that don't have material. Turn the filter off again. Now, you may not want to schedule all the hours that are estimated for each job, so let's correct that next. Now, because most jobs can be completed next week, they're small jobs, most of them, we'll start by copying the mechanical total hours into the mechanical schedule hours column. I'll do that by copying the column, Control C, and I'm going to paste special into the schedule hours column, and I'm just going to paste the values in there because some of the numbers in the mechanical hours column are calculated. They're formulas. I don't want to copy the formulas. So, and I'll change that title back to schedule hours. Now the only one we want to change here is this job here. We only want to schedule 80 hours for that, so we'll do that. Then we'll do the same for the electrical hours. So that's done. So let's have a look at how much mechanical work we can do with the 304 available hours. We've got the backlog. It contains only the work we can schedule, and it's still in priority order here. So we now need to assign hours to these jobs, working from the top down. So we'll look at mechanical work first. Let's turn the filter back on again. And we're just going to look at the jobs that have got mechanical hours, everything that's not blank. There's the mechanical hours, still in priority order. Now down the bottom of the screen, if I scroll down on this, hold the mouse, click left button down and scroll down, it adds up the numbers in that column. You see there's 40 hours and the ones I've highlighted so far. So I can just hold the mouse button down and scroll down until I get to 304 hours. There's 200, there we are. That's 322, 306, 306, we'll stop there. So these are the jobs that I can theoretically do with a mechanical manpower next week. Now just to keep track of those, I'm going to just highlight those cells with a different color so I can see these are the mechanical jobs we can do. I'm also going to put in the scheduling code. So I put an F on the top there, and I hold the left button down and scroll down to the bottom of the green cells. Press Control down to fill in the Fs there. F is a scheduling code that says these jobs are the ones we expect we can complete next week. Now there's one here, we don't expect it. That's going to overrun to the following week. That's what the O is for. So now we'll do the same thing for the electrical work. We'll turn off the mechanical filter, select all, and we'll turn on the electrical filter. And we're going to select everything except the blanks. And we'll fill down here till we've used up the 93 hours. There's 77, 141. And let's highlight those again. And once again, we'll fill down to the bottom of the green cells there, Control D with the Fs, because there's nothing in the electrical work that will overrun till next week except this one here, because we don't have enough manpower to do that one. Then we can turn the filter off again. So what we've done now is we've highlighted the jobs that it's theoretically possible to do like next week. Some of them have O's in there, which means they won't be completed, but we know what's possible. But it really is an oversimplification. We've selected some jobs that need both mechanical and electrical, and there's no electricians available, for example. We also haven't taken into account any of the other scheduling limitations that are in the scheduling comments column, like the Hopkins order and so on. So let's have a look at the Hopkins order. I turn the filter on again and I look at the scheduling comments here, and I want to do a text filter now. I want to see anything that contains the word Hopkins. There are 3 of them. 2 of them we've been able to schedule, but work order home here, work order 4301 we have not been able to. So we should have a look at seeing where we can bump that up the priority list a bit. Right now I will put an F on that and highlight it green. Now we know that's going to put the mechanical hours over the limit, but at least it will appear on the schedule when we get to that point. And I might even put the priority up to a 4. And I'll turn the filter off again. Now the last thing we need to do is to add the reference numbers. And these are the numbers that show on the graphic schedule we looked at before. So what we do is we fill those in the reference column here. We put a 1 in there first, and then we can highlight that down to the bottom of the priority list. And go home, fill, and fill series, and you add 1 per step. Click on OK there, and you have got those reference numbers added. I'm going to make them bold because they're so important for the scheduling process. Now these reference numbers are the basis for building the detailed weekly schedule, and they will of course change each week, so they need to be posted with the current weekly schedule and the current backlog list. Now, as I mentioned, this is a simple schedule for a crew with just 2 different trades in it. If you have many trades, The process is almost the same, but the difference is that instead of having separate columns for each trade, they would all be in a column, a common trades column. So here's an example. So here I've shown the scheduled hours for each of those trades. You can see we've got millwrights and carpenters and painters and operators and sheet metal people and so on. All we need to do is to select that all and turn on the filter, and let's have a look at just the work for carpenters. And you can see these are the jobs for carpenters, and you can do the same thing as we did before. Scroll down here until you've used up all your carpenter manpower, and do that for each trade. Work your way down. Let's have a look at the painters, and so on. So it's very much the same process. Highlight the cells, put in the Fs for scheduling codes, and then when you're finished, turn the filter off again. One thing I will point out down here is the safety meeting. You can see there is a row for each tradesperson, each trade in the safety meeting. If you have this kind of situation, I'd suggest that you want to look at doing something else, like setting up a standing work order for safety meetings, scheduling it, blocking that out as an absence before you start the scheduling process, and so on. Makes it much easier. Now, if you have a large number of trades like this, especially if they have some restrictions on what work they can do, scheduling is much more difficult. You'll inevitably find that there'll be some trades that you have to assign to low priority work because they're not needed or anything that's a high priority, and you may end up buying materials for jobs that really are not that easy to justify. But if you've got the flexibility to do things like assigning a painter to assist a pipe fitter who's on a high priority job, that's got huge value and makes the scheduling process much easier. Now we're going to stick with the two trades for the rest of this video. But before we start on building a detailed schedule, I would like to show you how the scheduling code is used. Now, in part one, we looked at the timeline for backlog updates. You can see that if we're looking at doing an update on the 19th of April, we have a backlog that was prepared on the 12th. And when we download the information from your maintenance computer system on the 19th of April, most of the jobs that are being done during the week of the current week, the 18th to 22nd, have not been completed, and they're still open in the backlog. So when they copy over, we get some duplications. The scheduling code we can use to get rid of those duplications. Now the backlog, we've updated to show which jobs we can apply manpower to for next week. We put the scheduling codes in. I'm just going to remove the shading from those boxes. So this is the raw backlog from the 12th of April, but we've added the scheduling codes in and we've added the reference numbers. Now when we look at the download from the 19th of April, it doesn't contain the information we've added to the Excel spreadsheet, but we want to merge that with the current backlog to see what the changes are. So I'm going to go through that merge process. First of all, I click on a cell in the lookup table, which is the new download. Then I'll click on the current backlog, the 12th of April backlog, and I'll open up the AbleBits Merge Tables wizard, go through the process we went through in part one. Go to the lookup table, I want to match the work order numbers, select all the fields to match, and finish, and that's done. Now I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to increase the width of that column so I can see it. A useful trick in Excel is to unwrap and rewrap text that tidies up the table. Now I'm going to turn the filter on and look at the new jobs. Here's the new work orders from last week, and we'll highlight those in red as we did before. So we've added the priorities to the new jobs here, and now we need to resort into priority order as we did in part one. We sort first by first priority, and by the secondary priority, and then by preventive maintenance frequency, which blends the new jobs into the into the backlog. And as you'll see, there are several jobs. Here's one. Exactly the same job. They're duplicated. A lot of the PMs, weekly PMs, will be duplicated because the PM that's scheduled for this week has not yet been closed. And also a lot of the small jobs that were scheduled for this week that will be completed this week are still on the backlog. Now, they're the ones that we've got the F code on. These are the jobs that are currently in progress and we expect to be closed out this week. So the thing to do is to check with the maintenance supervisor, update those just to confirm that they will be completed, if not change them to O's. And then we can remove these jobs these duplications from the backlog. So we'll select the table, turn on the filter, and the first thing we want to do is to filter by status code. Now the standing work orders have got F's on them. We don't want to delete those, so we will take the standing work orders out of this table, and then we'll filter by schedule code, and we'll select only the F's. These are the jobs that we expect to be finished next week. We don't want to show up on next week's schedule, so we can just scroll down to the bottom of those and delete them. Now we turn the filter off. Here's our updated backlog, but we've removed all the jobs that we know are going to be completed this current week, but we've left the standing work orders in there. So if you happen to miss a job, it doesn't matter very much because it's going to show up in the next weekly download. So you've got a good some protection there from mistakes that in fact are easy to make when you're doing this process. We'll go back to our backlog. We've added some reference numbers. We've highlighted the boxes and the jobs that we know that we have manpower for theoretically. And this is the end of the first step. Now this is very good progress, and you may want to stop there and just assign your tradespeople to these jobs with green boxes on a day-to-day basis as you go through. But we know this, we can go to the next step, which is to assign individual tradespeople by name to the work orders and to determine when each job will be done. And we'll end up with a schedule that looks like this. So let's have a look at how we can do that. So now we'll start to fill in the graphic schedule. First we'll enter the weather and events. Now I'll look at something like weather underground, and it says it's going to be sunny except there might be some rain on Friday, and we know we're going to be running the Hopkins order this week. It doesn't happen often, so we will show that along the top here. So that's good scheduling information that we need. Now, when filling in this schedule, it's really nice to have two monitors because you want to be able to see the schedule that you're working on and also the backlog because that's where the information comes from. So for this video, I'm going to be toggling between these screens. I hope it's not distracting for you, but it's easier to see than if I split the screen. Now, building this schedule may look a little mechanical, and it might be something that you think you could delegate to a clerical person with good basic computer skills. But each job must be looked at really critically with a good understanding of what's involved. And the scheduler should look for synergies, like jobs that require the same isolation procedure, for example. And this might dictate that lower priority jobs be scheduled to take advantage of those opportunities. Now, the planned estimate, which is what shows on the estimate column on our backlog, should be based on a time it would take an experienced tradesperson. And if the scheduler knows that the person he's assigning it to hasn't done the job before, should adjust the estimate to reflect that. You might assign 2 people to a job instead of 1 just for training opportunities and so on. And of course, if the supervisor thinks that the estimate is just wrong, which it could well be, then it should be corrected. And you should use some common sense. You need to minimize the number of times the jobs stop and start. It doesn't make any sense to start a 40-hour job on a Friday afternoon, for example. Now, scheduling is not an exact science. The schedule should be filled in as completely as possible, but you know it's going to change, so don't worry if you can't fill in all the boxes. And you might find that as the schedule fills up, you have to start scheduling some lower priority, smaller jobs just to effectively use all the hours in the week. And that's why the backlog list should show all the jobs in the backlog, not just the ones with priorities of up to 4, which is next week's work. Now let's take a look at the schedule template. The boxes along the bottom reflect the P1 priorities. If we go back to the priority codes, here's what they are. 4 should be done next week, 3 is already in progress, and so on. And that's what these priorities reflect in the boxes down the bottom here. When you're scheduling work, it's a good idea to first of all schedule the things that you can't change. For example, if you've got a tradesperson who has got unique skills and can only do certain jobs, you should schedule those first, because that's a serious limitation. Then you should look at the longer jobs and fill them in next, and so on. Now, as you go down the priority list, you'll see there are some longer jobs. They're not the highest priority work, but you should schedule those first, because you know when you look at the Fs here, you know that you've got lots of people to be able to man those jobs, so they should be put into the schedule early. So the longest job is number 8, the water supply piping. 40 hours each for Kent and Weldon, who are on this job. So let's schedule that first. It's priority 3, jobs in progress. Control Z copies that. We'll drag it up to Kent, and I'll press Control N, change that to number 8, and expand it to fill in the day there, and I'm going to copy it 4 times, Control Z 4 times, and fill it in for the rest of the week. So that quickly we've scheduled Kent all week. Now, Weldon is also on this job, but we don't need to enter this twice. There's an arrow up here which you can move up onto the select objects, move that up onto the quick access bar because you use it frequently. Click on that, and then we can highlight those boxes. If I press Control Z, it copies all those. Turn this select objects arrow off again and move those down to Weldon. So there we are. He's scheduled for the week. Those are handy little tricks to use. Job number 1, same thing. This is an urgent job. 2 people on it for 16 hours. Copy that. Don't need to change the number on it. And we'll give that to Don and to Dave. And Paul. I can either copy the blocks or I can just copy the 4 times and fill them in with beside the right tradespeople. And we can carry on with that process. So now I've carried on and put the standing work orders up to job number 7. Now these are the routine jobs that are done every week, and you may find it an advantage to make a template with the standing work orders on it so you don't have to enter them each week. In this case, I notice I've made a mistake. I've assigned the small jobs 4 hours a day for mechanical, job number 7, to Don, and it's really Rick's turn. This is a job that rotates, so let's just move those up to Don, and everyone will be happy. So we can carry on filling in the schedule. As you get to the end, you'll find that it gets more difficult, and that's when you have to start looking at different priorities. So I filled in a few more of the boxes up to job number 11. Now job number 12, it's mechanical inspection. It's 1 mechanical person for 8 hours. So I want to assign Susan to that. So I click on that and I copy it and change the number. I can move that down, give that to Susan for 8 hours. Next one will be job number 13. Having those little macros there where you can copy the cell and change the number is very, very useful for this process. So here's the completed schedule. But when I'm checking it over, I see a couple of problems. First of all, when I've been adding jobs, I've buried the safety meeting. So I click on the safety meeting, move the cursor till it's across, right click and say bring to front. So that's visible now. Now, I also noticed that jobs 34 and 41, if I go back to the backlog, 34 is to replace the sprinkler head, 41 is to do some relamping. You can see they both use the same scaffold here, but I've scheduled them at the same time, so that's not going to work. So I'm going to move 34 out of the way for a minute, move job 29 into there, and move job 34 to Tuesday. I know the work well enough to know that if we leave the scaffolding up overnight on Tuesday, it's not going to be a problem. So the schedule's almost complete. Somebody comes in and says, Susan's had an accident. She's not going to be at work next week. So I just select Susan's jobs using the group arrow and move them out of the way for a while. And I'm going to just show her as being absent for the week on medical leave. And now I can look through the schedule for the highest numbered jobs. Those are the lowest priorities. Take them out and reschedule these jobs that were assigned to Susan. Do a slight reschedule at this point in time. A couple of other things you might want to do. Where you have jobs that you have two people assigned to, it's not always obvious that that's the case. Here's the job 36 and here's the job 36 down here. So if I move one of those, I need to move them both. So it's nice to be able to identify those. So you can do things like pressing down Control and selecting both of those. I've got Control V, Control I. So now the jobs, you can make the jobs that involve two people identifiable like that. And you can do other things like if you have some shift tradesmen available around the clock that you can assign to the small jobs and emergencies, you can show them on the bottom of the schedule here as well. When the schedule is completed, go back to the backlog and make sure that the Fs are only on the jobs that you have actually been able to schedule. So when you get to the bottom here, you'll find that there are some jobs you haven't been able to schedule. There are some long electrical jobs that perhaps you weren't able to schedule. Take the Fs out of those, and maybe you've added some small jobs and you want to add the Fs to those so that the schedule shows the matches the schedule codes on the backlog list. This is the completed draft schedule ready for review with the maintenance supervisor. In the scheduling process, the person doing the schedule is making decisions on which tradesperson should be assigned to each job, which of course is the maintenance supervisor's responsibility. So an essential step is to have the draft approved by the supervisor. Now, a very good knowledge of the content and status of each work order and the capabilities of each tradesman will give a very good draft schedule, so that the supervisor will be unlikely to make many changes, but he may want to look for opportunities for training or to change some estimates and so on. Now, a maintenance supervisor's position is one that's subject to interruptions, so I recommend that it's appropriate for somebody else to prepare the draft schedule for the supervisor. A really good position for this is the area planner, because the area planner should be thoroughly familiar with the status and the content of each job. And they should also become familiar with the capabilities of each tradesperson as they work closely with the supervisor. Now, because the planner's position is responsible for looking forward to what's going to happen in the future, he should also be in a position to sit in a quiet office at the same time each week to prepare this draft schedule that does require some concentration. The second to last step is to make any changes the supervisor wants. Then distribute the schedule and the work list to the operating and maintenance supervisors so they can prepare for the weekly scheduling meeting. So the finished schedule must always be viewed, of course, with the backlog list with the right reference numbers. But when the operating and maintenance supervisors have seen this, they can come to the scheduling meeting prepared. It should only require some minor adjustments, and a scheduling meeting can then be literally a 5-minute meeting. Now, from my experience, operators really like to see a schedule like this and it has great value for them. That's the end of the scheduling process. Most of what's in this video is setup. Once you have the templates all set up and the backlog in place, the amount of work needed each week is very little. I estimate that to prepare a schedule like this takes less than an hour, and 1 hour to organize over 400 hours of trades work I think is very efficient management. Now this process may look a little bit complex, but it's just like riding a bicycle. Once you know how to do it, it's easy. And when the templates are prepared and you've got your directory set up on your server, and you've done this a couple of times, it should become a routine. Now daily schedules must be extracted from the weekly schedule and reflect the changes that you know are going to happen during the work week. The purple scheduling boxes on the template are used to add new jobs on the daily schedule, and tracking these jobs that were not scheduled is not a bad KPI, or key performance indicator if you like. And I should mention that measuring the adherence to weekly schedule by calculating the percentage of the scheduled work that was actually completed is a very poor KPI. It encourages the wrong behavior, and there's more on this in our article, Measuring Maintenance Performance, the Hazards and KPIs. There are a lot of benefits from good scheduling. First of all, operators will know when their work's going to be done. Everybody has a chance to think about their work before they get to it, and they can prepare for the conditions they're going to have to work in. And following good schedules enables the store to prepare packages of work order materials in advance. It's a waste of time doing this if you cannot stick to your schedule. And there's many opportunities to reduce the amount of work by coordinating jobs that need the same preparation, such as things like scaffolding and cranes and excavation and entry procedures and so on. And these often become apparent during the scheduling process. And of course, the schedule clearly shows everyone that the most important work is the work that's going to get done. As I mentioned in part 1, the introduction of a scheduling process may concern some people, and the reasons for good scheduling should be carefully explained. It should not be seen as a threat by anybody. It's not to make people work harder, it's to make sure that they're doing the right work. Now, scheduling requires a high degree of discipline at all levels. I'd say the biggest threat to good scheduling comes from managers who have a firefighting approach to managing. All managers must support the process and ensure that frivolous and emotional requests for work are challenged, and generally encourage people to plan ahead through good inspections and reporting problems when they're identified, and not wait until they become a big problem that is urgent. They must also ensure that business processes are followed. Now, one of the most important of these is to make sure that supervisors diligently change the status of work orders to complete as soon as the work is done. That way the backlog will stay in control. One of our clients was having trouble defining the role of a planner, and this weekly routine for a planner was drafted. I think this is a very good way to approach the whole process of planning and scheduling. You can see the pink boxes are the detailed work planning activities. The blue box is the review and update of the backlog of every Tuesday, and in this video we talk about updating it using the merge table wizard at this point and tidying up the new backlog. And the yellow boxes are scheduling activities. And I think it's a very good role for a planner to do the scheduling, because planners are familiar with the work. They should be familiar with the status of every job. And if they work closely with the supervisor, it won't be long before they understand what each of the tradespeople, what they can do, and put them in a position to be able to prepare a very good draft schedule. Even in an organization with a high degree of discipline, a good scheduling tool is still essential. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I believe that this process is as good a tool as any that you'll find on any of the larger maintenance computer systems. And another advantage of this process is it does not cost anything. Here's a list of articles on a website that relate to scheduling. Good scheduling will get more work done, but that alone may not improve your overall maintenance costs. And I strongly recommend that you have a look at the article second at the bottom of the list, the Maintenance Cost Reduction Conundrum, which addresses this issue. So that completes these videos on maintenance work scheduling. Thanks for watching, and please share these with anybody who may be interested. And we look forward to hearing from you with any feedback. Thank you.